By the time the American occupation of Japan ended in April of 1952, the country had changed dramatically. There was a great amount of uncertainty, even fear, for the many possibilities that lay ahead. And with the memory of Hiroshima and Nagasaki still fresh in their minds, another anxiety had spread itself across the country. Nuclear weapons and cataclysmic destruction that could fall like a hammer at any time. For many in this après-guerre society, the world must have looked like it had for the European survivors of an earlier war, encapsulated by W.B. Yeats in his 1919 poem, The Second Coming. Things fall apart. The center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. But there's a crucial difference between these two experiences. The poets and artists coming out of the First World War saw a golden age destroyed in a nightmare of barbed wire and poison gas. For Japan's lost generation, however, the world hadn't gone anywhere. The blood-dimmed tide might be loosed, but there was no ceremony of innocence to drown, only chaos. A lot of this comes from Buddhist teachings, the wickedness of the material world, the ever-presence of suffering as the measure of existence. Humanity is left to seek whatever shelter it can. That, in essence, is the world of Akira Kurosawa's films. The people who populate this unfeeling cosmos are, on the whole, too preoccupied with their day-to-day concerns to notice that the world teeters on the brink. They keep their heads down, they mind their own business, they try not to make waves. Their passive acceptance of the world's madness makes it inevitable. Yeats's rough beast continues to slouch toward Bethlehem. Faced with the indifferent universe, Kurosawa's characters plunge into distraction, seeking material comfort, yet only making things worse for themselves. The slum dwellers of 1948's Drunken Angel are frenzied consumers of excess. Trash fills the mosquito-infested swamp that borders their homes. Disease runs rampant: typhus, tuberculosis, malaria. This environment only makes them more frenzied, more desperate for a moment of escape. In Rashomon, the commoner wastes no time in tearing apart the walls of the building for firewood. Before he heads back out into the storm, he kicks his fire into the rain, depriving the others of its warmth. Honor, compassion, family, loyalty, all fictions these characters tell themselves to disguise the truth within. They're little more than trained apes, ready to abandon all pretense of civilization at a moment's notice. In the Hidden Fortress, two Hayakawa peasants pledge their undying friendship, but their vow is abandoned each time they rediscover the cache of gold belonging to the Akazuki clan. Neither man wants to divide the treasure equally, and both find ludicrous excuses for taking the lion's share. In Throne of Blood, Kurosawa's adaptation of Macbeth, Lady Asagi soothes her husband's conscience, saying, Asagi reminds Washizu that Lord Suzuki himself gained the throne by murdering his predecessor. Compare this to Shakespeare's portrayal of the righteous Duncan, whose death is avenged by the loyal Macduff. Kurosawa's adaptation ends differently. Washizu is betrayed by his own archers in the hopes of currying favor with the approaching enemy. For Kurosawa, no one's hands are clean. Farmers hunt down samurai and murder them for their weapons. They stockpile their best food and drink while crying poverty. Samurai talk of honor while plundering villages, burning houses, raping peasant women. Children turn their back on ailing parents when the money runs out. Even a gentle-hearted woodcutter turns out to be a thief. All of us are complicit in the roller coaster going off the rails, whether we feel the car lurching or not. But what of those of us who do? What happens when our eyes open and we find ourselves face to face with the blank stare of the universe? Kurosawa posits 3 distinct responses to the horror of a meaningless existence. We can call the first option the way of the beast. If the world is monstrous, why not become a monster? Why not take what you can get while you can get it, and cut down the fool who stands in your way? Yusa Shinjiro, the antagonist of 1959's Stray Dog, is driven to madness and violence by the horrors of war and the squalor he's forced to live in after returning home. As the elderly Kiichi Nakajima slips into fear and paranoia in I Live in Fear from 1955, his children scheme to have him declared mentally incompetent to preserve their inheritance. In many ways, these characters' behavior is just a harsher manifestation of the traits we've already discussed: greed, the pursuit of comfort, the propensity for terrible violence. Part of Kurosawa's genius lies in the fact that he presents these characters in 3 dimensions. We might not condone them, but we can see how circumstances have led them to act as they do. The second path, what we'll call the Crusader, seeks to beat back the darkness at every turn. He's heroic, single-minded, unwavering, inflexible. In The Hidden Fortress, General Makabe is so devoted to his mission that it blinds him to everything else. When he learns that his sister has been captured and beheaded, he dismisses the loss as part of his duty. Later, the group discovers an enslaved Akazuki girl being sold into prostitution. Princess Yuki orders Makabe to purchase her and set her free. Makabe resists, afraid the girl will slow them down on the road to safety. "Your kindness will be your downfall," he says. In reality, it's Princess Yuki's kindness that sees them safely across the border, just as it is the sensitive rookie Murakami, not Detective Sato, who brings Yusa Shinjiro to justice. In the end, these crusader types fall short, blinded by their cynical take on humanity and their obsessive need to stamp out evil in all its forms. Sato's final monologue paints a picture of a world filled to bursting with Yusas, suggesting that the crusade will never end. Only the third path, the way of the healer, offers any real hope. It's the way of empathy, striving to see the humanity in everyone. This is Princess Yuki, delighting in the fire festival of an enemy people, risking her own life for the slave girl's freedom. This is Detective Murakami, who can't see his quarry as an animal, when he, too, has returned from the war deeply scarred. It is Kanbei in Seven Samurai, moved by the suffering of the farmers, and later, by the realization of his own complicity in their degradation. The healer recognizes his own capacity for good or ill, and the large role that our circumstances and blind chance play in our lives. The healer's journey is an arduous one. Heartbreak and disappointment are the only real guarantees. It often seems easier to choose one of the other paths. Many of Kurosawa's healer types resist their empathic tendencies, either straitjacketing themselves within the Crusaders' rigid outlook, or diving headfirst into animal hedonism. But the healer's path is not easily abandoned. Each one must eventually face his true nature. Drunken Angel's Dr. Sanada, portrayed by the incomparable Takashi Shimura, is a prime example. A hard-hitting alcoholic who sometimes even drinks from his jars of disinfectant, Sanada wages a one-man war against tuberculosis in the Tokyo slums. He champions a rational approach, not only to medicine, but to life as a whole. Like most crusaders, he shows little patience for anyone who fails to live up to these standards. When his nurse contemplates returning to her ex-boyfriend when he gets out of prison, Sanada berates her for her weakness. But look at his face. There's a different set of emotions at work in his heart. Similarly, when Toshiro Mifune's character comes to him with a severe case of TB, Sanada shows him nothing but contempt. Over time, however, the doctor begins to see his own misspent youth mirrored in the life of this small-time gangster, and resolves to save him despite the Yakuza's refusal to heed his advice. When his efforts fail, Sonata is forced to confront the truth. For all his talk of rationality, in the end, it is his heart which guides him. Like Rashomon's woodcutter, also incidentally played by Shimura, Sonata doesn't understand his own soul. But he keeps moving, one imperfect human among many, doing his best to make things a little better for those around him. Which leads us to Kurosawa's poster boy for the healer type, Kikuchiyo from Seven Samurai. If you've seen the movie, you're probably about to call bullshit. Kikuchiyo seems to have much more in common with the peasants of the Hidden Fortress than with Dr. Sonata. He's loud, obnoxious, selfish, ruled by his appetites and a desire for his own glory. And he's indifferent to the code of honor which governs the others. He falls asleep on watch. He has no sympathy for the samurai that are hunted down and murdered by the villagers. But then the bandits burn the old mill where the village elder is holed up with his family. Now we start to understand. The man the other samurai have dubbed Kikuchiyo was born a peasant. His family was slaughtered, his home destroyed. It's never clear whether by bandits or corrupt samurai, and in the end the two are basically interchangeable. Alone, left with nothing, he chose the path of the beast. But some part of him always resisted that decision. We can see that in his eyes in his very first scene in the movie, when he pleads silently with Kanbei to save the kidnapped child. At Heihachi's funeral, Kikuchiyo angrily demands that the farmers stop weeping before he runs away in tears himself. It's never been their sensitivity he's railed against. It's his own. Kikuchiyo continues to resist his healer impulses as the film goes on. The day before the final battle, he abandons his post in hopes of achieving glory for himself. As a result, the bandits overrun his section. The samurai manage to beat them back, but not without casualties. The cowardly farmer Yohei, and the samurai Gorobe. During the final battle, his gigantic sword, which has up till now been a source of comedy, shatters. He flings the hilt aside without a glance, and then pulls out another, this one normal-sized. He's joined his fellows at last, embodying the truth which Kanbei spoke earlier. Reunited with his authentic self, Kikuchiyo lays down his life so that others may live, fulfilling the ultimate calling of the healer. Kurosawa's world is a cold place, and humanity always one step away from the precipice. But his heroes, rather than succumbing to despair or nihilism, approach the world around them with compassion, showing us that even the most animal among us can achieve redemption. The darkness may eventually win, but we can still bring some measure of warmth and comfort to our corner of the madness. In the end, maybe all we have is each other, in a universe that feels no sense of obligation. Hey guys, hope you found that video essay as interesting as I found the movies that inspired it. Let me know down in the comments if you think there might be something to the comparison I drew to the lost generation of writers and artists after World War I. Let me know if you think I'm completely full of shit where it comes to Kikuchiyo and this healer type. Keep an eye on this channel in the coming weeks. We're going to have some more reviews, some more video essays coming. I know last time I promised that that was going to happen, and it hasn't really been a thing. We're working on it. In the meantime, keep it real out there, guys. Cheers.